I was the wedding photographer. What I caught on camera ended the marriage before it began. My name is Evan, I'm 32, and I've been a full-time wedding photographer for the past 7 years. It's not as glamorous as people think. You're not sipping champagne and dancing with the guests. Most of the time, you're hunched behind a lens, sweating through your shirt, trying to make stressed-out people look effortlessly joyful. But the thing is, I love it. I get to be part of someone's most important day, and sometimes I get to catch magic that even they didn't notice. That's the romantic in me, I guess. Anyway, this story isn't about magic. It's about Claire and Damien. I'll never forget those names. I got the gig through a referral from another photographer who couldn't make the date. The bride, Claire, messaged me 2 months before the wedding, and she was incredibly sweet, polite, responsive, sent me a full Pinterest board of what she wanted. I met Claire and Damien 2 weeks before the wedding at a coffee shop downtown to go over the schedule. Damien was polite but kind of cold, corporate-looking with one of those Bluetooth earbuds still in during the meeting. Claire did all the talking. She'd show me a sample photo and look at him like, "Isn't this perfect?" He'd just nod and go, "Whatever you want, babe." I figured, hey, some guys just aren't into wedding stuff. No red flags yet. The wedding was set to take place at this gorgeous vineyard venue outside the city, one of those places that practically photographs itself. They'd spared no expense: string lights, a live band, a hand-lettered welcome sign, the whole nine. The day of the wedding arrived and everything was on schedule. The weather was perfect, golden hour light, warm but not too hot. Claire looked stunning in her dress. Her bridesmaids were drinking champagne and crying happy tears. But behind the scenes, there was a weird energy. Damien kept disappearing, literally disappearing. I was trying to get the groomsmen photos and he wasn't around. One of his buddies, this loud guy named Mike, said, "Bathroom," and laughed. The third time Damien vanished, I finally asked, "Is everything okay?" Mike just smirked and said, "Cold feet maybe, you know how it is." I didn't. I've shot over 100 weddings and never once had the groom wander off 3 times before the ceremony. But okay, not my circus. Here's where it started getting weird. About 20 minutes before the ceremony, I was behind the venue grabbing some shots of the string lights coming on at dusk. The vines were glowing, absolutely beautiful. Then I saw something through my lens. Movement near the utility shed behind the property. I zoomed in instinctively. 2 figures. One was Damien. The other was not Claire. It was one of the bridesmaids. I won't say her real name, so let's call her Emily. They were close, way too close. He leaned in and whispered something to her, then she put her hands on his chest. I was frozen. I didn't take the shot. I lowered the camera. It didn't feel right. But then, Damien kissed her. Right there, 10 minutes before the ceremony. I still didn't take the photo. I felt sick to my stomach. After a minute, they separated. Emily smoothed her dress and walked back inside, like nothing happened. Damien stayed behind, messing with his tie. I stood there like an idiot, wondering what I was supposed to do. This was someone's wedding. Claire's wedding. She'd spent the past 2 months sending me references and excited emails. She'd looked me in the eye that morning and said, "I'm so nervous, but I'm so happy." And Damien was cheating on her, with one of her best friends, minutes before saying "I do." I felt physically ill. I went back inside and got to work, trying to shake it off. I told myself, "You're here to do a job. You're not family. It's not your place." They did the ceremony. It was short and emotional. Claire cried. Damien smiled like he hadn't just been tongue wrestling her bridesmaid behind a shed. And then came the reception. God help me, I had to follow them all night taking happy photos. First dance, cake cutting, toasts. At one point during dinner, I caught Damien and Emily looking at each other across the room. Their eyes lingered just a little too long. And I swear, Emily smirked. That's when I knew it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was planned. I should mention something else. I wasn't shooting alone that night. I had my assistant Kayla with me. She was doing candids and second angle shots. I pulled her aside and said, "Did you get anything weird earlier? Like anything behind the venue?" She blinked at me. "You saw it too?" I felt the blood drain from my face. She'd caught the kiss on her zoom lens. Click. Clear as day. She showed me on her camera screen. My stomach dropped again. There it was, Damien and Emily, locked at the lips. The rest of the night, I went into autopilot. Smile, shoot, save. smile, shoot, save. I went home at midnight and sat in my office staring at my hard drive. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Claire's voice in my head. I'm so nervous, but I'm so happy. And I knew. There was no way I could pretend it didn't happen. But there was also no easy way to expose it without potentially ruining everything, and possibly getting sued in the process. I needed to be careful. I needed to think. Because what I had wasn't just a photo, it was evidence, and I was about to become part of a nightmare I didn't sign up for. So Caleb stormed off after punching his best man, Kyle. I had a gut feeling this wedding was heading straight into a disaster zone, but as the photographer, all I could do was keep shooting and pretend everything was fine. When I got back to the tent, everything looked normal on the surface. People were laughing, dancing, holding champagne flutes. Emma was busy talking to her mother, completely unaware that her new husband had just clocked his best friend behind the hydrangeas. I scanned the crowd. No sign of Caleb. No sign of Kyle either. A few minutes later, Caleb reappeared. He was composed, kind of, maybe too composed. He kissed Emma on the cheek, whispered something, and poured himself a glass of scotch at the bar. He didn't take his eyes off me the whole time. I knew then that he'd seen me with the camera. Now, here's the thing about being a photographer. You capture things people don't realize they're showing. I've caught everything from secret kisses between bridesmaids and groomsmen to a literal deer crashing a ceremony. But Caleb, he looked like someone with something to hide, and it was eating him alive. After the father-daughter dance, things got worse. Caleb disappeared again. Emma kept smiling for the crowd, but you could tell she was starting to get nervous. She texted him. I saw it. Then she called. Then she handed her phone to one of the bridesmaids. I snapped a photo of her looking around the tent, clutching her dress with one hand, the other holding a half-drunk mimosa. Her smile was cracking. It didn't take long before she whispered something to her maid of honor, and the two of them slipped away toward the house. I had no idea where Caleb had gone, until I saw a flicker of movement through one of the side mansion windows. There he was, inside the estate's library, pacing like a caged animal. I shouldn't have, but I took out my zoom lens again, positioned myself just right between the open tent and the house, and clicked. Then I saw it. He was on the phone and crying. I adjusted focus, took another shot. He put a hand over his face, shaking. Then he mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, obviously, but I read lips well enough to know what he said. I can't do this. I swear to you, my stomach actually dropped. I thought he meant the marriage. I was half right. Within minutes, Emma burst into the library. I saw her in the corner of the frame in my next shot. She flung the door open and demanded to know what was going on. This was where the night cracked in half. Because Caleb didn't lie. He didn't stall. He just told her everything. Right there, in that room, while their 200 guests partied below. I don't know exactly what was said, but I know the fallout. Because 5 minutes later, Emma ran back outside. Alone. Face pale, mascara smudged. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't throw a fit. She walked straight up to the DJ, whispered something, and took the mic. And I swear to you, everyone stopped dancing, mid-song like it was choreographed. What she said next? I'll never forget it. Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to thank you all for coming tonight, and to let you know, there won't be a honeymoon. Cue nervous laughter from the crowd. She continued. In fact, there won't be a marriage, at least not mine. More silence. She smiled. But not the kind of smile people use when they're happy, the kind you wear when you're seconds away from losing your mind. Turns out, she said, voice trembling, you can date someone for 3 years and still not know who they really are. A couple of guests gasped. A bridesmaid dropped her glass. Caleb is not the man I thought he was. And apparently, neither is his best man. Now that set the tent on fire. Literal, audible gasps. Some people turned toward Kyle, who had finally reappeared at the bar with a bloody nose and 2 missing buttons on his shirt. Emma walked straight past him without looking. I turned to shoot the moment, heart pounding, hands sweating. I felt like a war photographer at that point. Kyle tried to say something, but Caleb, now also back, just stood frozen, watching her disappear toward the bridal suite. And then it happened. Caleb followed her. She slammed the door behind her, but not before I heard her scream from inside. "You could have just told me, Caleb. You didn't have to marry me just to pretend." Some people say weddings are dramatic, but this wasn't drama. This was pure tragedy. I lowered my camera. The crowd stood in silence. The music had stopped. The lights still twinkled, but no one was smiling anymore. One by one, guests began to gather their things. It was over. Later that night, while packing up my gear, Caleb found me in the hallway. He looked like a man who had just crawled out of a burning building. His tie was loose, shirt half untucked, and eyes bloodshot. "You got it all on camera, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't even care," he said. "She deserves to know the truth." I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to, but he told me anyway. "I was in love with Kyle," he said, voice breaking. "I've been in love with him since college. I thought I could marry her and forget about it, pretend I could live the life I was supposed to." He shook his head, tears falling freely now, but I couldn't do it, and Kyle told me right before the ceremony that he was going to tell her if I didn't. So I snapped. I hit him, and then I realized he was right. She deserved better than a lie. I was speechless. What do you even say to that? Before he left, Caleb said one last thing. "Do what you want with the photos, but don't make me look like the villain." I didn't mean to hurt her. I just didn't know how to stop lying to myself. I nodded again, and then he walked off into the night. After Caleb walked out into the night, everything that followed felt like the slow unraveling of a fairy tale, one that ended halfway through the book. I stayed behind longer than I usually do after weddings. Not because I wanted to, but because nobody else knew what to do either. The staff was frozen. The DJ just stood by his booth, unsure whether to start packing or wait for an encore. And the guests? They looked like they'd witnessed a car crash in slow motion. Emma never came back out. No one saw her after her speech. I wandered the tent for a bit, trying to decide whether I should just pack up or make sure she was okay. I eventually found her maid of honor, a sharp-eyed girl named Hannah, sitting on the edge of a fountain with her shoes in her hands, staring into the water like it owed her an explanation. "She's not okay," Hannah said before I could even ask. I figured. She locked herself in the bridal suite. Won't let anyone in. Her mom's in there now, trying to get her to at least take the damn dress off. She turned to me, mascara halfway down her face. "Do you think she's going to be okay?" I didn't answer, because I honestly didn't know. 2 days later, I got a text from Emma. "Can you send me the photos? I want to see them. All of them, even the ones from the library." I hesitated. Sending someone a photo album of the worst day of their life felt wrong. Cruel, even. But she insisted. Said she needed to see it all, even the moments she missed. So I did. I organized them by timestamp, just as I always do. The ceremony, the kiss, the first dance, and then slowly everything after, the bar fight, the zoomed-in library confession, the microphone moment that made the whole tent gasp. I titled the gallery The Wedding. No filters, no captions, no edits. Just the truth, frozen frame by frame. 3 days passed. Then Emma called me. Not texted, not emailed. She called. I didn't even know people still used phones for that. She said, "Do you think it's crazy if I want to post some of these photos?" I blinked. "Post them? Like, online?" "Yeah," she said, calm. Too calm. "I want people to know what happened. The real story, not the version everyone's whispering about." I warned her. "Once you put something like that out there, it's out there for good." She said she didn't care. I spent 3 years being someone I thought he wanted. I think I've earned the right to tell people who I actually am. I couldn't argue with that. The next day, Emma uploaded 12 photos. The one where she was standing under fairy lights, alone, holding a half-empty mimosa. The one where Caleb stood in the window, hand over his face. And the one of her at the mic, smiling like someone on the verge of breaking. She captioned it, "I didn't get the marriage I planned, but I got the truth I deserved." and I still look damn good in that dress. It went viral, and I mean viral. Over 8 million likes within a week. Thousands of comments. Everyone wanted to know what happened, who she was, why she looked like a rom-com heroine in a movie that took a hard left turn. People called her brave. Some called Caleb a monster. Some called Kyle worse. But Emma never once deleted a comment. Caleb never made a statement. But Kyle did. On his own Instagram, a black screen and a long paragraph. He confirmed everything. The fight, the love, the heartbreak. The moment he realized they'd been lying to themselves and Emma for too long. He ended it with, "We didn't mean to hurt her, but we did. And for that, I will always be sorry." Even that post blew up. Everyone was obsessed with the wedding that fell apart. It was the most tragic love triangle you'd ever heard, except it was real, with real people, real pain, real consequences. And as for me, well, my inbox started blowing up too. Apparently, people wanted to hire the photographer who captured the most honest wedding of the decade. I got messages from influencers, reality stars, even a few tabloids offering to buy the photos. I never sold them. But I did email Emma to ask how she was holding up. Her reply? Weirdly, "I'm okay. I feel lighter, like the truth finally set me free. I'm not angry anymore, just relieved it's over." She paused, then added, "Still never want to see another peony in my life, though." About a month later, I heard from her again. She was in Italy. Not on a honeymoon, just a solo trip. "I booked it with the miles I was going to use for Bali," she said. She sent me a selfie of her in front of the Colosseum, eating gelato. No wedding dress, no makeup. Just a woman who had survived the most public heartbreak of her life, and somehow looked stronger for it. I didn't reply right away, but I saved the photo, because maybe not all fairy tales end with a kiss. Some just end with a truth bomb and a plane ticket to Rome. There's a strange epilogue to this story. 6 months after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail, an actual physical letter. It was from Caleb, just a single page, handwritten. He didn't apologize again. He didn't beg for sympathy. He just said, "Thank you for capturing the moment I finally told the truth. I spent my whole life pretending. You gave me one moment where I didn't have to. I'll never forget that." It was signed, Caleb, formerly the groom. I think about that wedding more than any other job I've done. Not because it was a disaster, but because it was real. Brutally, painfully, beautifully real. It reminded me that love isn't always a clean, white dress and a perfect kiss under string lights. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and ends in tears before the cake is even cut. But sometimes the end is the beginning, and the photos tell a story no one expected, but everyone needed to hear. The morning after the wedding that wasn't, my phone was still vibrating with messages. Jenna's family, Brian's groomsmen, a few wedding guests who somehow got my number. They were all trying to piece it together. What happened? What exactly did I see? Why did Jenna run off sobbing and scream at Brian in front of 100 people? But I stayed silent, not because I didn't want to talk. God, I had 1,000 things I wanted to scream, but because I knew anything I said could only make things worse. For everyone. And frankly, I was still trying to process it myself. After all, I didn't mean to uncover a betrayal. I didn't mean to get involved. I was just the guy behind the camera. I was there to capture the smiles, the tears, the laughs, not the lies. But there it was, frame by frame. Let me rewind. After Jenna stormed out of the wedding, the place erupted. People were frozen, shocked, murmuring like a crowd at a crime scene. Brian's mom tried to chase after Jenna, but her heels got caught in the grass and she fell flat on her face. Half the guests gasped, and the other half watched like it was a Netflix series. Brian just stood there, pale, lips trembling, eyes darting like a hunted animal. The crowd looked at him like he was a villain. He looked like he had no clue what just happened. That was the strangest part. He didn't even seem angry. He looked defeated, like he knew this day would come. I didn't see Jenna again that night. She disappeared into a bridesmaid's car, and I heard later she stayed at a hotel, refusing to speak to anyone, not even her mom. Brian's side tried to regroup. His best man, Travis, went around telling people it was all a misunderstanding. "There's no way Brian would ever do that," he said. "Somebody must have messed with the photos." Oh yeah, the photos. That's where it all started. That one random moment where I panned across the groomsmen before the ceremony, just taking candid shots for the reception slideshow. Brian's phone buzzed. He picked it up, smiled, typed a message quickly, and didn't notice that I captured the screen just as the preview popped up. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I wasn't zooming in or spying. I was just snapping through the moment. But later, when Jenna asked me to add a few more photos to the live reception feed, I pulled up the shots, went frame by frame, and saw it. A message from someone named S. A message that read, "Don't forget who you belong to. After tonight, she'll be your wife, but I'll still be your home." I didn't recognize the name. At first, I thought maybe it was a joke between friends, but the way Brian was smiling at the message, the way his hands lingered on the screen, typing and deleting, typing and deleting. Then I saw another frame, another message, pop up seconds later. "I watched you sleep this morning. You talk in your sleep, Bri. Guess who you said my name instead of?" My stomach dropped. I debated whether to show it to Jenna. I really did, because I knew that if I was wrong, if I was misreading it, I could ruin everything. I could destroy a relationship, a family, a day they'd dreamed about for years. But if I was right, then she deserved to know. So I showed her. I pulled her aside, just before the walk down the aisle, and asked if she trusted me. She said yes. When I showed her the zoomed-in frames, her face changed. Not immediately. At first, she stared at the screen like it was a foreign language, like she wanted to believe it wasn't real. Then her eyes clouded. Her hands shook. She whispered the name, Samantha. I didn't ask who that was. She walked out of the tent and never looked back. Now, 2 days later, I was home, deleting hundreds of shots. Ones I knew no one would ever want to see again. Toasts that would never be heard. Smiles that were now false. A bouquet toss that never happened. I felt guilty. I really did. Not for what I showed Jenna. I knew that was the right thing. But for how it all happened. For how easily I became the grenade in their perfect day. Then I got a knock on my apartment door. I opened it and Jenna stood there. No makeup, hoodie, red-rimmed eyes, but she looked composed, maybe even relieved. "Can I come in?" she asked. We sat on the couch in silence for a long while. She asked for tea but didn't drink it. She just held the mug between her palms like it was a stress ball. "I owe you an apology," she said. I blinked. "What? Why?" "For yelling at you after the ceremony. For saying you ruined it. I know you were just trying to help. I know that now." I nodded. "It's okay." She stared at the floor. "It wasn't the first time," she said quietly. "What?" "Brian. He cheated on me before, years ago. We were on a break, but he hooked up with someone at a conference. Told me it was a one-time thing. I forgave him." She looked at me, jaw clenched. It was her, Samantha, his co-worker, his work wife. I always knew there was something off. My stomach churned. "You saved me," she whispered. "From a life of that. From doubting myself forever. I never would have looked again if you hadn't shown me." I didn't know what to say. She got up to leave, but paused at the door. "Do me one favor," she asked. "Anything. If he ever calls you, don't tell him where I went. Don't tell him what I said. Let him live in the silence." I nodded. She walked out, and I never saw her again. The story didn't end there, though. Of course not. Because a week later, I got a call. Not from Brian, from Samantha. I didn't even know how she got my number, but she called with a strange calmness. "You don't know me," she said, "but I think we need to talk." I should have hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a cafe. She looked exactly like I imagined, sharp, composed, with a kind of cold beauty that made you instinctively distrust her. "I'm not here to defend him," she said first. "I just want you to understand something." I sipped my coffee, waiting. "He told me he was going to leave her, she said. Every month, for a year. He said the wedding was a formality. He said he loved me. I raised an eyebrow. And you believed him? She laughed, bitterly. No, but I wanted to. She slid a flash drive across the table. What's this? I asked. Proof. In case he ever tries to paint you as the bad guy. Texts, emails, photos, screenshots. He doesn't get to rewrite the story. I didn't want it, but I took it anyway. Thanks, I said slowly. She stood. You did what I couldn't. You told the truth. Then she left. That would have been a satisfying ending. Poetic, even. But life's not neat like that. A year later, I saw Brian again. At another wedding. Not as the groom, as a guest. I spotted him in the crowd, sipping champagne, wearing that same smug grin. He saw me too, our eyes locked. He didn't flinch. He didn't look angry. He looked impressed. Later that night, as I packed up my gear, he came over. You still taking incriminating photos? He asked, smirking. Only when people cheat on their fiancés, I replied. He laughed, as if I made a dad joke. You know, Jenna always said you had good instincts. I stared at him, speechless. He leaned in slightly. You did me a favor, you know. She was never going to forgive me for what I did. You just sped it up. I wanted to punch him, but I didn't. Instead, I took one last photo. Not for a slideshow, not for a client, just for me. A candid shot of a man with no shame, no regret, no soul. I framed it when I got home. Labeled it, What a Liar Looks Like. And I made a promise to myself. No more bystander moments. No more just the photographer. If I see something, I say something. Not to be dramatic, not to ruin weddings, but because the truth matters. Even if it shows up on a blurry screen between first kisses and champagne flutes. The end. Epilogue, the last frame. It's been over a year now, since the wedding, since the video, since the fallout, since I put my camera down. I moved to a quiet coastal town, small place, the kind with bookstores that still smell like real paper, and people who ask your name because they actually care, not because they want a tag for your coffee order. I stopped photographing weddings, stopped photographing anything, really. I thought I'd left all that behind. Until one ordinary Saturday, a woman walked into the bookstore where I now work. She had a little girl with her, maybe 5 years old. The girl clutched a camera in her hands, not a phone, not some plastic toy, a real camera. A vintage Canon AE-1 film. I did a double take. It was the same kind I'd used to learn the craft. Curious, I walked over. She's got good taste, I said, pointing to the camera. That's a classic. The mom smiled warmly. A gift from a friend. She told her, look at the world for what it is, not what you want it to be. My stomach tightened. Your friend, what's her name? Jenna, she said casually. She lives in Texas now. Teaches photography, writes a blog about honesty mostly. I smiled, stunned. My chest felt full and empty at the same time. She sounds like someone who sees clearly, I said quietly. The mom nodded. Yeah. She says a camera isn't for capturing beauty, it's for capturing truth. And just like that phrase, those words, I felt the weight lift a little. That night, I opened the drawer in my apartment I hadn't touched since I moved. Inside, my old hard drives, memory cards, lenses, wrapped in cloth. My DSLR sat in the back like a sleeping ghost. I powered it on. The last photo I had ever taken was still on the screen. Brian, caught mid-motion, guilt frozen in his eyes, the bride's veil fluttering in the edge of the frame like a warning. It wasn't a wedding photo. It was a reckoning. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hit delete, not because I wanted to forget, but because it had already done its job. A few months later, I started shooting again. Not weddings, not for clients, just the world. People laughing at cafes, strangers reading alone on benches, storm clouds gathering over the sea. The real stuff, the quiet stuff. One afternoon, I checked out Jenna's blog. She'd written a piece titled, Thank the Photographer. It started with this line. Sometimes it takes one frame to end a lie and start a life. At the bottom, she'd written a single sentence, just for me. I knew it without asking. You didn't ruin my wedding. You saved my life. I sat back and exhaled. In the end, I wasn't the villain. I wasn't even the hero. I was just a guy with a lens who clicked at the right time.